a different location today, just to keep you on your toes, all right? A couple of things. Make sure you have your Bible. Make sure you have a pen. Make sure you have your notebook as we get started for this Bible study. If you need to pause and go get that right now, feel free to go do that. As we get started today, we're in Proverbs chapter 4, and we're talking about the choice. There's a choice we always have to make. All people have a choice to make to follow God or to reject Him. And today we'll be in Proverbs 4, starting in verse 11, going all the way through verse 27. And how many times, as you're going there and looking that up, how many times have you planned a vacation or a trip? And as you've planned this vacation or this trip, you've looked at all the routes, you've looked at all the ways to go. It's easy to type in our phone and say, get me from this location to this location, but normally it gives you several options. Do you want to go the fastest option, or do you want to go the safest option? I was looking at one for a vacation recently, and as we're looking, it says, beware, some roads are dirt roads. I'm like, man, I haven't seen that on a map in a while. Like, is all the roads dirt roads, or just some of them, or is it just the driveway to get to the spot I need to be? So, things you got to look at, decisions you have to make. We're required to make those kind of choices as we do with our travel, as we do with where we're heading in our destination. We're required to do that on a regular basis, even daily basis. So, some choices seem to have little impact in our lives. Some, on the other hand, can change the whole direction of where we're going. Have you ever gotten confused, or have you ever been, confused over a choice you had to make about the options that were in front of you? You didn't know which path to take. I have in front of me a poem by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. Let me read that to you as we're getting started, and just listen about the decision that the poet has to make here. Two roads diverged in the yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as far as the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Here, as the poet writes, he talks about going down two trails, and both paths look good as far as he can see, not sure which direction to go, but he wondered and reflected in that last spot. Did I take the right path? And how far did that path take me down and the places that we were going? So as we jump in, there's always crossroads that we have to pick, always paths that we have to choose each and every day about where we're heading and where we're going. Here in Proverbs 4, we see that people have a choice to follow or reject God. Solomon relates that there is only one choice that puts the believer in the route to righteousness, while the other route is to destruction. We read that in Matthew when we talk about choose the narrow gate versus the wide gate. One leads, one's narrow and is a hard path, but one is wide and easy is the path that leads to destruction. But here, Proverbs 4, Solomon puts himself once again in the position of the father or the sage. He delineates these two different paths of life, that of following wisdom or abandoning wisdom. And while the Old Testament understands of wisdom was fulfilled through the law, the New Testament fulfillment is found in a relationship with Jesus Christ. So, on your notes, what I want you to do is just, on your sheet of paper, just divide it in half and put destruction and life. And as we're going through this, what does Solomon bring out that talks about this will destroy you in life if you take this path? And on the other side, what is it that you need to do to bring life into your life, to have success in this world and in the world to come? As we look at it, starting at verse 11 through 13, read through these three verses, 11 through 13, and reflect on how Solomon describes wisdom. How does Solomon describe wisdom? So pause, read those verses, jot down some notes. When we come back, we'll dive back in. If You look at verses 11 through 13. Let me ask this question as we're starting. How are information and transformation connected to wisdom? How is information and transformation connected to wisdom? Do they always lead to the other? That's a good question. Maybe you should pause. Maybe you should jot down some notes on that. You need to know that information doesn't always necessarily lead to obedience. We have a lot of information about the Bible. We have a lot of information about how we're supposed to live as a Christian. But does that mean it transforms our life? Does that mean our obedience lives up to the information that we have? Not all the time. Probably not nearly as much as we would like it to. In 2 Timothy 3:7, look over there maybe and just see some references that it talks about. There's a difference between head knowledge and heart knowledge. Head knowledge is all this information that we can store up here. We know what's right, we know what's wrong, but our heart, our passions, our desires, the things that lead us in life don't necessarily equal up or transform our lives. Our heart drives our passions. Our heart, our emotions drive our passions, not necessarily the ability to think through what's the right decision. Okay? So if you look here in 11 through 13, in verse 13, there's a record. I want you to put under the life side thing. What are some admonitions that Solomon writes down here? In verse 13, 3 things that I see that jump out. Hold on to instruction. Solomon's telling his son, hold on to instruction. Don't let go of it. Guard it. Guard it, for it is your life. So hold on to instruction. Don't let go of that instruction, and then guard that instruction. Three admonitions that he gives there. Right? Hold it, don't let go, and guard it. Why? Because it's your life. It's everything you need. All this wisdom that you're getting from Solomon, the wisest person in the world, your dad. Hold on to it, don't let go, and guard it with everything that you do. As you talk about teaching and wisdom, he's talking about guiding our paths, making sure our paths are going straight, make sure we're making the right decisions. Hold on to those decisions. Hold on to the knowledge that you have to make those right decisions. Don't let go of that instruction that was given to you by many people and many people that have gone before you to the right path, and then guard it to make sure that no outside influences come in and persuade you to get off the path. So how is it, as we go down through as these admonitions, how does following God's wisdom lead to life? What happens in our ability to choose the way of wisdom when we do not take seriously the consequences of choosing the opposite of wisdom? What happens? How many times do we sit here and we're on this path and we're just thinking to ourselves, what path do I need to take? And we have the ability to choose wisdom, but what happens when we just hold loosely those consequences of the other path, of not following wisdom? As we move on into verse 14 through 15, it reads, keep off the path of the wicked. Don't proceed on the way of the evil ones. Avoid it. Don't travel on it. Turn away from it and pass by it. As you look at these verses, Solomon's given directions to stay on the right path. So as we look under your section, destruction. Get your note sheet out. As you look in those 2 sections, just look through 14 through 15. What instructions should we put under the path that leads to destruction? What it says, keep off the path of the wicked. Why? Don't proceed in the ways of evil. Avoid it. Turn away from destruction. Pass by destruction. All these commands that Solomon's given. Don't get off the path that you're on that leads to righteousness, that leads to wisdom. And here, it's not even talking about another path to take. Here, it's even talking about, too, of just stepping off the trail. Sometimes you're going down trails and one step could be a cliff on the side. Another step could be some nice grass and it feels good on your feet. But the farther you go and the farther you get away, it leads you away from the true path that you're supposed to be on. So make sure that we are keeping off the path of the wicked. Make sure that we are not proceeding in the way of the evil ones. Avoid it. Turn away from it. Pass by it. And how many times do we struggle with things like that in our life each and every day? Moving on to verse 16 and 17. Look at the characteristics of the life of the wicked. In verse 16, for they can't sleep unless they have done what is evil. They are robbed of sleep unless they make someone stumble. They eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. Just look at those list of things that the ungodly people will go after, right? They can't sleep unless they have acted upon the evil that's in their heart. They make other people stumble along the way. Misery loves company, right? So if I'm miserable and I'm not made some bad choices in life, look, what can I do? Let me take you with me. Same thing happened in the Garden of Eden. Satan lost heaven, couldn't have it. What's the one thing that he could do? Harm the one thing in creation that was made in God's image. If I have to go to punishment, I'm going to take any and everybody I can with me. And what does he do? He goes and he tempts Adam and Eve. And they get off the path of wisdom, the path of righteousness, and they follow the path of wicked. Satan was a murderer from the beginning, the scripture says. So, write down those characteristics that jump out at you, and how would you define those characteristics of verse 16 and 17 on the section of destruction? As we move into 18 and 19, let's see how Solomon contrasts these two paths. Make notes on your sheet of paper as we go. The path of the righteousness is like the light of dawn, shining brighter and brighter until midday. But the way of the wicked is like the darkest gloom, and they don't know what makes them stumble. What a passage for us to hold on to. The path of righteousness is like the light of dawn, right? All of a sudden, you see righteous, and guess what? It's just going to get brighter and brighter and brighter. More and more will be revealed to you. When righteousness comes in your life, more and more knowledge and things of God will be revealed to you. But the way of the wicked is in the darkest gloom, and you're walking around and you're stumbling, and you don't know what makes you stumble, and it gets you madder and madder and more frustrated, and more evil thoughts come to your head. Why? Because that's what wickedness does in our life, and that's what sin does in our life as we go forward. Let's look at some other passages too that you can look up, maybe pause and read. 2 Corinthians 4:4 talks about the God of this world blinding people so that they cannot see the gospel. John 14:6 says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes unto the Father except through me. So we see that there's the gods of this world that keeps us blinded, but the God of the next life, the God of the Creator that wants to shine light and wisdom on everyone. And then Jesus himself says, I am the way to a life. I am the way to truth. I am the way, the truth, and life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So anything else is going to take you away from me. So see how these paths, as we describe these types of paths all through the Bible, Jesus and God are always claiming, come to righteousness. Come to righteousness through me. Do not go off on your own path. So seeking wisdom is a continuous process that requires integrating knowledge and lifestyle. How many times is it that we just get a little bit and we leave it? Just like sin is progressive. You don't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to rebel against God, but just a little thought creeps in, and a little thought creeps in, and more, then you realize how far off the path you really are when you're way down the road. But also righteousness is the same way. You get a little bit of righteousness, and if we are constantly building on that righteousness, then what we see is the righteousness, the sun gets brighter and brighter till midday. So we need to make sure that we're pursuing that righteousness and growing that righteousness versus the wickedness, the sin in our life. So verses 20 through 27, our last passage for today. Directions on how to stay on the path of wisdom. So as we read through this, list out things on the life side. But understand too that things don't last unless it's a heart change as well. So here is where the sage, the father, steps in and he says, my son, pay attention to my words. Listen closely to my sayings. Don't lose sight of them. Keep them within your heart, for they are the life to those who find them, and health to the one's whole body. Guard your heart above everything else, for it is the source of life. Don't let your mouth speak dishonestly, and don't let your lips talk deviously. Let your eyes look forward. Fix your gaze straight ahead. Carefully consider the path of your feet, and all your ways will be established. Don't turn to the right or to the left. Keep your feet away from evil. Stay on that narrow path that you have been called to. So as we read this, just Go back and reread. Jot down what are things that we need to do to stay in life, the path of life, right? Don't lose sight. Keep them in your heart. Guard your heart. Don't let your mouth speak dishonestly. Fix your gaze straight ahead. Let your eyes look forward. Consider the path that you're on and don't deviate off that path. Or just some things that jump out. But what is so enticing about wickedness that it causes us to lose our focus on right and good? And maybe that's a question you need to wrestle with yourself. Maybe some people around you that are listening to this, maybe that's something you need to discuss. What entices you to make you want to not pursue the righteousness or the wisdom and to deviate from that? What are those things in your nature? It's going to be different from you than it will be for me probably. But you have to know and understand that these are the triggers that entice me. So I need to stay away from those so I can make clear decisions to move forward. Staying on the path of wisdom is by keeping our eyes focused on Christ. And that is a constant challenge. There's many wisdom teachings that help believers throughout the book of Proverbs that help us understand the importance of seeking God's wisdom in our daily life. As we wrap up, let's just affirm that sin is progressive, but so is wisdom. So what are you feeding in your life? Are you feeding the sin in your life to make it bigger and stronger? Or are you feeding the wisdom of God in your life, which is making it bigger and stronger in your life? Because whichever one you're feeding, you're starving the other. If you're feeding sin, you're starving godliness. If you're feeding godliness in your life, then you're starving the sin in your life. So which one are you feeding today? And in your life, most days, I pray that you pursue godliness and feed it each and every day. It's the small daily decisions that reveal our path, that reveal the true heart transformation in our life. Are you following the wise path or the foolish path? Changing our behavior without changing our heart doesn't lead to a lifestyle change. It leads to a momentary decision. So make sure that you're changing your behavior, but also it's a heart transformation that takes place in your life. So if you look through your life, as we wrap up, just something for you to reflect on. Examine your everyday decisions. Are you taking steps closer to godliness or more steps toward wickedness? And then what actions can you do to get back on that right path? Thank you for joining us today. I hope this has blessed you, and keep digging in to Proverbs. And next week, I am working on having a lesson, but I will be out of town, and I'm trying to get someone to cover that. If not, we may have to skip a week, okay? But just giving you a heads up on that. But I'll let you know, okay? But God bless. Let's pray. Dear God, I do thank you for today. Thank you for allowing us to come and hear your word. And I pray and ask, Father, that we are feeding righteousness and godliness in our life each and every day and starving the sin in our life. But Father, we can only do that with your help. Guide us and direct us. In your name we pray. Amen.